Before we let you go, we talked a lot about the state of conflict in Syria and the civil war going on in the Middle East right now, and American policy towards that. But I'd like to change directions for a little bit and engage in a little game theory, a little war gaming with you, the war nerd, right now, and to talk about our own home country. You said, like, you have said that you've lived abroad for a while. You don't even understand America anymore. But if you can take your perspective from afar, from a removed casual observer, I'd like to talk about this idea that I see burbling up now in certain precincts on the right and elsewhere, I should say. This idea that now with Trump, American politics have now gotten so poisonous and so polarized. We've never been this polarized before as a country, that it may be time to just split up the United States. And then of course the unstated assumption there being, let's have it out in another civil war.
I mean, if they insist, if all the libs insist on not letting us go quietly, we'll fight.
Whether it's the guns thing or just the general, the idea that I think a lot of it comes from the fact that Trump won this election. He surprised everyone. Everyone in the media surprised us. Nobody saw that coming. He won the presidency. All of his fans, it was overjoyed. But they've discovered that that doesn't equal respect in the broader culture. They feel like they've won something, but they haven't been able to cash in on the prize that comes with winning it. And it's very upsetting to them, and it's very angering to them. So you begin to see more and more of these articles. There was one in the Federalist just last week that suggested just breaking up America into soy land and real gunfucker country. So
they actually used the soy, by the way.
They did say it was
nice to
soy
see
land.
The alt-right language is
Kurt
now in the
Schlichter has
Federalist.
written a sort of fictionalized version of this.
He wrote two articles and 2 books.
Yeah. Based on this idea that, like, let's say blue states and red states, let's just say the West Coast, the upper Midwest, and Northeast become its own blue, soy, homo America. And then the rest of real America becomes the real America. Could you game out for us, or just do a little thought experiment about what that split up would look like? What would a full civil war look like? Would there be irregular warfare? How would this conflict play out in your mind? Because for the people who are really giddy about this idea, they love the idea that, in their words, one side has all the guns.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you think, is that fool's gold when planning a potential civil war or insurrection?
I don't think small arms would decide it. And these people have a strange faith in small arms. An AR-15 may be a big improvement on a .38 special or a protest sign in terms of combat power. But if the enemy has drones with Hellfire missiles, they don't have to come anywhere near you. Someone sits in a booth in Nevada or Virginia or wherever and just waits for you to come out the front door. And depending on how much they hate you, they either wait until your kids aren't with you, or they wait until your kids are with you. And then you die and you don't have any idea what happened to you.
I saw one of the great, I check in on Kurt Schlichter from time to time because he's my favorite one of those guys. He was sort of like rear echelon infantry colonel during Bosnia, and so every time someone argues with him, he's like, "Oh, really? I've fought for your rights, just sitting on a desk in Bosnia." Yeah. But he reposted this meme from somebody, and it was just like, it's a fat guy in the middle of a field with an AR-15. He goes, "Oh, how's a out of shape guy with an AR-15 going to beat the military, the government?" And then the next panel is him aiming down the iron sights. And it's just bullet points, and it goes, wait for the driver to get out and take a piss. Shoot him in the head. Shoot out the tracks, with 5.56 ammo.
Yeah. Shoot out the tracks of a tank.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
What? It was just one of the most asinine fucking things I've ever seen.
Well, it's not their best bet. Their best bet, to me, seems pretty obvious. Knowing the people who joined the armed services in the wretched 70s when I got out of high school, you work with those people. Like I said, war is a people thing. And the one issue that would matter in the first months of a war like that is, where do the armed forces break?
Yeah.
Who do they go with? Now, they're going to have a lot of links to those to that guy in the cornfield. But not everybody in the army thinks that way. And the real nightmare in a war like this is the armed forces break up, and some units go with one side, some go with another. That certainly happened during the U.S. Civil War. Some commanders go with one side, some go with another. George Thomas, maybe the greatest commander of the U.S. Civil War, was a Virginian. He went with the Union. Other Virginians did not. And that was when things were relatively simply divided. There was roughly a north-south thing. There weren't that many radical slave owners in Maine. There weren't that many abolitionist preachers in Georgia. None, in fact. But it's not going to break that simply now. There's just no way.
Yeah. Isn't that like the real lesson of all these fantasies is the idea that it would break down by state, where it would be like the Mason-Dixon line, and then the two sides would face off against each other, whereas it's actually much more likely to become like Syria, which is the cities are slaughterhouses,
it's an urban-rural divide, basically.
Yeah.
If it rose up, you couldn't defend a state because your major cities are going to be filled with people who are sympathetic with the soy people, because all the major cities everywhere, even in the real America,
red states,
are filled with a lot of people, and they are largely soy based.
They are. In fact, with a vengeance. I taught in Vegas for a year, and I'd been a punk in Northern California, where it was like, yeah, so what? You'd be a punk in Vegas. It's serious. I mean, those people actually fought, like literally fought, because they would get stopped on the street. And yeah, there are little factions in those deep red states that are angry enough to fight for the cities. Of course, the soy thing brings back a really interesting question, because this is news to me. I thought farmers grew the soy, and I thought farmers were part of the red side. I don't know.
Weird.
Farmers grow the soy, but the hipster latte drinkers consume it and become feminized as a result.
Yeah,
This is the latest thing in America.
Yeah, to be like the Tony Montana of soy. I'm feminizing everybody. I'm getting rich off this shit. Push it to the limit.
Raise his hand in back row. But if they stop buying the soy, won't your red state farms go bankrupt? I mean, it's like, if real red-blooded Americans can't eat soy, then you're out of business. I don't know. But anyway, like I said, I don't know. But I would think the really brutal reality would be the armed forces would divide. They would divide in... A generation ago, they would have divided strictly on ethnic lines. I mean, let's be blunt about it. That's how it would have been. Mm-hmm. I get the sense in America that it's not quite that simple anymore, that things are not quite as brutally segregated as they were when I left. They might therefore divide on belief lines. I can imagine church-based militias controlling large parts of small town and rural America. And if that's the way things are to divide, then the urban centers might develop their own quasi-churches as a response. And what it would really come down to is so different from what these survivalist people imagine that you have to laugh, really. First of all, I'm from California. It comes down to water. Everything in California comes down to water. You can sit in your suburban house with 3 AR-15s, you've got one, your spouse has one, your worthless cousin is finally, manning the back door because you don't think anybody will come that way. And so what? First, you got to sleep, and you don't trust your cousin when he's asleep. Any group can beat any individual, and the gangs would very quickly rule, not using gangs in the Fox News style, but whatever constituted a gang in this world, a larger group of people than you've got. They might well be church militias in the beginning stages, but you might also see, as you've seen in many insurgencies, university militias. that would be kind of fun. Give those undergrads something to do that really gets them excited.
I'm just thinking about my own ethnic group. Not even Jews in New York would be unified.
Yeah,
you would have you would have Chabad versus regular ultra Orthodox, then the secular Upper East Side Jews. And I wouldn't even be in that, because then the Midwest Jews and coastal Jews would hate each other for other reasons.
I'm imagining the idea of Brett Stevens being killed by a university militia. Like, this is what I was warning about. I'm not an asshole. Oh, Brett Stevens won't stop talking about college students.
I think that would happen fast because I think these people read college students all wrong. I had to deal with them for a long time. I think they've been temporarily told to damp the machismo in public, but it's there about 1 millimeter underneath, and there were some great Bolshevik killers straight out of the universities, and I think that would happen again.
I mean, we don't want the Civil War to happen, but if there are university militias, imagine the quality of production that goes into a RISD beheading video.
And who's going to be better at drones and homemade Hellfire missiles? I mean, you've got your AR-15, but I don't think Popular Mechanics is going to tell you how to make one of those.
The MIT group, they're going to be ferocious.
Those Boston Dynamics dogs loaded with C4.
Our greatest dream, murdering a Boston Dynamics dog, is about to come true. Oh, the SEC schools, the SEC football schools, they become the shock troops?
Yeah.
Holy shit. I might actually follow college football for once this thing happens.
The thing that I think that they really don't, because you're right, yeah, resources are the thing that they're just not figuring on, because most of these guys are suburban. They imagine themselves to be survivalists, but they buy their affectations in the catalog, and it comes to them because the mail shows up every day, and they go to the restaurant and the food's there, and they get their Crest store, and it's always at the pharmacy. The day that those things stop showing up in your subdivision because the distribution lines have been cut, that is something that I don't think any of them have thought about for a second.
No. Like, you'd want to live near a river. If you don't live near a river, especially in the West, you are in trouble. Where does your water come from? I mean, there are... in Northeast Washington, there are these huge corporate farmers who always produce the most right-wing candidates in the elections. And somebody pointed out about halfway through one election cycle, don't you get every drop of water on those gigantic fields of wheat out of government dams and flowing down through government pipelines that have to be maintained endlessly before you can grow a single stalk of wheat? Because they don't think that way. They think, I'm the last real man in this state. In the West, there's only Seattle. And it would be an expensive lesson, but there would be a kind of pleasure in seeing that's not how it's going to shake down. Something similar happened in the American Civil War. There was like, Yankees are effete urban losers, and I'm worth 10 Yankees. That didn't turn out to be true, especially in the West. In the Civil War, one Yankee was worth about 2 Confederate soldiers. Those Ohio and Indiana guys, they kicked ass just one-on-one. In the East, the Union generals for a long time were so god-awful that, you couldn't really tell. But it just didn't shake down that way. Any belief that because I talk a lot and I hang out with my friends who also talk a lot and we clean our weapons together, that I'm worth 25 software engineers is just bullshit.
In all honesty, the Midwest would eventually be the victors of an American Civil War. People from Ohio are the biggest fucking psychos I've ever met in my life, and I mean that in a good way. Minnesota is the only state where no one gets mad at them for having a Confederate flag in their state house because they stole it during battle. Some Midwesterners are all talk, the guys who argue about copper wiring theft on Facebook, but that's everywhere. But most of them are the craziest fucking people you've ever met, and they're just very soft-spoken.
And also the sweetest bitch you ever meet.
Sweetest bitch you'll ever meet, but crazy, and they just want to talk to you about new Monster flavors coming out, but they'll kill 20 people in front of you.
And that's assuming nobody else got involved. I mean, the U.S. doesn't live in isolation anymore.
Right. How quickly would China get involved in that?
Yeah.
They could take a big bite out of the West Coast, maybe.
How could you resist? You just want to say, well, let's see here. Because you would play with factions, and you often play with a weaker faction against a stronger faction because you know that if they lose, they owe you everything, and you want to weaken the strong faction. And then when they start to get weaker, you side with them again, and eventually you bleed the whole place white, as it used to be said. And this is not right, this is from corpses going that way when all the blood's out of them. And that's what would happen.
Well, we are on record as supporting President Xi and his vision, one belt, one road. You can bring the belt to the United States. We'll support you. So if the shit goes down, if you want to drop some crates of Chinese AKs to us, we will all the way down the line.
President,
support
I would
you.
I personally would like an AN-94. I like the two round burst, but President Xi, anything you give us.
This is a Vision of the Future podcast militias.
Ooh.
Join up. It's like Starship Troopers. I'm doing my part.
I'm signing up for aged propagandists with health problems who are in the most secure bunker you have.
I mean, we wouldn't last long, but I know we could take Pod Save America before we went down.
Yeah,
Done.
Yeah, no,
Done.
They're coming at us with conventional arms. I think the Joe Rogan network might triumph over everybody.
No, they'd beat us. No, yeah. The Joe Rogan fans would be
Way
spraying
more of them,
They'd be
way
spraying
better
some
shape.
sort of aerosolized DMT, causing all of their opponents to just have ego death and be revert to childhood, and they wouldn't even have to kill anybody.
Yeah.
But we would get Pod Bless America before Pod Save America. I hate saying that because it's not a fucking phrase. Pod Save America. They're going down.
I think the final,
Their wine mom Sadukor shock troops would be very dangerous.
but wait until they fight the Mark Maronites.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Well,